I'm not just saying that to try to brown nose you people. I just, you enrich my life just by knowing you. Each one of you have, those that I've known for longer have blessed my life over the years, just because you do good things and I mean, just because of the way you try to live your life. So thank you for showing up for this and being a part of it. So if you go on the website, those are where the bios are. I felt very fortunate to get Shawn and Jeanetta because when all this stuff hit, they have been so busy. And so if you want to know more about them, which I encourage you to do, I would go to the website and you can read their bios. But I don't want to take their precious time doing that. They're both very articulate, important people in our Black community that I think their voices are important for us to hear right now. So I don't know who wants to go first between you and Shawn and Jeanetta. Did you guys draw straws already or anything?
Well, I guess my question is, what do you want from us to begin with? And then once we get that clarification, I'll toss the baton over to Jeanetta.
Okay. You know, one of the things I mentioned in the email to you both was, I think there's power in personal stories. And you both have lived here in Utah for some time and other places. I think a number of people in Utah, could be a large majority, because of lack of experience with Black people, probably don't feel like there's a lot of racism or feel like there's much racism in themselves. And I'm pretty sure that's in great error. So I would love you both to share personal stories. It could be your own personal stories and that of your family and kids, but help us flesh out some of the experiences you've had. And they don't all have to be bad, but I'm assuming you have quite a few that could instruct us and help us get a better feeling for what you experience and others in the Black community here experience and why. And then we can transition to maybe how you feel about this current issue and what's going on and what you would suggest people that want to be of assistance. You know, I don't know about this term white ally, but you know, most of the people are in this discussion because their hearts hurt and they are concerned and want to do something and want to be part of the change that seems to be happening and want that change to stick. So anyway,
Great.
Either one of you, I'm fine.
Well, I can go ahead and start. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, and doing, you know, in grade school, of course, we went to very small all Black school until the Brown v. Board of Education came about. Of course, that was through the NAACP and Thurgood Marshall. And then we went to integrated schools, and we had, there was no Black teachers in that school at all. And so some of those teachers that had taught in the elementary school, they had to find jobs elsewhere. And that's what happened, you know, with a lot of the African-American teachers across the country after Brown v. Board of Education. And so we all thought that the Brown v. Board was great, but then it still did away with a lot of jobs. Even in Oklahoma, I lived in a small town where you couldn't go into a restaurant like a McDonald's or Burger King to even order a hamburger. You had to go, if you were a person of color, brown, Black, you had to go in the back door, and you had to go, they had a separate facilities for those folks that couldn't, of course, go to the front door, and only ones that went to the front door were if you were white. So, you know, I experienced all of those type of things. And then, of course, I lived in Idaho, and I was very involved in the community in Idaho. And so when I moved to Utah, which has been over 30 years ago now, I found that the folks were eager to work with me, work with the NAACP. I got involved, you know, with the NAACP because I had been involved in Idaho as well. And so I made that transition, and that's how people start saying, well, where did you come from? All of a sudden I keep seeing your name come up Well, it was because I was involved in Idaho first, very heavily involved. And so when I made that transition here in Utah, it was much easier to make that transition and to work with people and people willing to work with me. And I tell folks all the time, even now, that I'm willing to work with anybody and everybody that's willing to work with me. And our NAACP, well, I won't get into all of NAACP yet, but of course we're nonpartisan. And so we try to work with all sides and for the common good and for the issues that come about. And so that's just a little bit about, my background. I served on our NAACP National Board of Directors as well from 1996 to 2002. And I continue to serve on a lot of those national boards and committees through our NAACP.
Thank you, Jeanetta.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I guess that's my cue to thank you,
Yes.
right? I've been here in Utah for over 40 years now. I grew up in Southern California. I'm fortunate to have my mother on this call as well, so this will be fun for her. I grew up in a household that made it very clear to us that we belonged, and made it clear that we were to be able to be willing to fight for our rights. In Riverside, California, it was one of 3 school districts that decided to desegregate the schools without a court order from the federal government. And there were a number of incidents that took place when I was very young. There was a school called Newell Elementary that was right around the corner from where I live, where we were supposed to go to school. And the superintendent of the Riverside City School District at the time decided that he was going to do some reverse segregation. So he was going to bring white kids over to our neighborhood to go to this school called Newell Elementary. And astonishing, right before the school was about to open, it burned down. So we were bused over to Alcott Elementary, and it wasn't my first experience being in an integrated school. My first elementary school was, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was in an integrated school as well. But what I ran into when I got over there was the animosity that teachers and students had for us. And I felt that every day that I went to school, I was really fortunate. When I was about 5th grade, I had a friend named Mark Moran, and he was I think the first white kid that I ever spent the night over his house, and my parents got a chance to meet and everything else. And the reason Mark and I became really good friends was his parents were in the Air Force. So they had a lot of exposure to a lot of different cultures. I didn't realize that until later years, but I did realize that whenever I was over at his house visiting him, nobody from our school would even hang out with us. We didn't get to play football or ride bikes with the kids from my school. They avoided us. Even though at school, they would at least talk to us and it would be cordial. And that was really one of my first experiences with understanding, that I was different, because when I was raised, like I said before, my parents told me that I'm no different from anybody else and I deserve every right that everybody else has. So fast forward to coming to college. I came to Utah at the age of 18 on a football scholarship. And I came in the wintertime. And of course, when you come on a recruiting trip, you get to hang, they kind of match you up with people they think you'll get along with. So I was hanging out with the fellas during the time we were being recruited. And they painted that shiny picture. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I really wanted to go to school in Arizona, which almost happened, but the University of Utah said I could play defense. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to go there. I got on the bus, came up here to Utah, and it was summertime, so I could see everything, and I could really see everything. I had no idea where I was coming. Being a knucklehead 18-year-old kid, not paying much attention except for anything but fun, I didn't realize where I was coming till I got here. And only days after I got here, there were 2 young black men assassinated at Liberty Park. And I happened to live just blocks away from there with some other football players. I called my father and said, hey, look, they don't want me here. I got to go. And he told me, He said, you're staying put. He said, no matter where you go, you can't run from this. And I'll never forget that conversation I had with him. And it's impacted me to this day, where I decided at that time that I was going to stay involved and try to seek out change for our community. You know, I had other focuses that took precedence, you know, for quite a few years. But in the last, 20 years, I've been able to circle back around and begin my efforts to create change. And that's kind of where I'm at now.
Beautiful thing. Shawn and I have done a few conversations together in the past, and I've been very impressed with his articulate manner and his good heart. Shawn, I remember one conversation, this was a more intimate one, I think with the Golden Rule, where you talked about even feeling in your neighborhood, kind of social economic types of differences and difficulties, particularly with school, for your kids. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you've experienced? And I think that would be valuable too.
Well, I was fortunate to move to the Glenwood Heights area where my kids went to school. They went to Brighton, which was, as everybody knows, there was quite a few affluent families there. And, there would be times that they would look around and they would say, hey, my friend has this great brand new car, or, hey, I want to go visit so-and-so, and they have this big old giant house. And I explained to them that those were just things. And I said, we provide to you in a different way. And the way that we provided to our kids was we invested in them and their activities and their education, in getting them exposure to things that a lot of other people didn't get exposed to. We took our kids everywhere when we were young. We didn't have the resources to just, fly, so we drive. But we spent a lot of time teaching our kids about themselves and about who they were. And I'm in a interracial marriage, and it was, tough sometimes for my wife to hear some of the things that I told my kids, but I told them I was going to be very honest and open with them from day one, so that they could acclimate to this environment that they're in and be strong enough people to survive. And they've done very well. They've been able to do that. They've stayed strong. But it's hard for kids, especially young people, to watch and see, with the way that our society is, others having and them not having. And it caused some fussing and fighting between my wife and I, but I pulled back on a lot of things I could have done for my kids, because I wanted them to feel and understand the necessity to know that wants and needs are different, and to be willing to be stronger people than falling into the traps of keeping up with the Joneses or having the nicest things. And I've been able to watch my kids develop that way as adults now, to where they fully understand it. And they've come back to me and said, thank you. Thank you for not doing those things. Even though I could have given, but I pulled back, it helped them to develop. But now I'm free in helping them and giving to them, because I know they understand the importance of what they're receiving. And that goes in every aspect of life, from, just little simple conversations about the people in the neighborhood, how you interact with folks, relationships, finances, taking care of the stuff that you do have. These little things that make all the difference in the world, to help them become strong people, because there are going to be incidents in life that try to fracture your strength. Now, we've all gone through them at some point in time. And you have to be strong in all other areas. So even though there's a crack in that one piece of the shield, the rest of your shield stays strong. And that's one of the things I really work on teaching my children.
Good, thank you, Shawn. Jeanetta, do you have any comments on how we can, one of the things I remember Shawn talking about, it seemed like it had to do with funding of schools. And you were a bit passionate about it, Shawn, because it seemed like the West Side was not getting an equal amount of funding. And part of it is because of added layers of things that in a wealthy area like Brighton, parents can contribute on the side, all kinds of resources that are not available to, typical parents in other locations. And wondering, we talk about, for us to make progress in society to more equality, we've got to do a lot in the early years.
Yes.
And what you're teaching your kids really helps that. But those that have, I wonder how we can also help those who are less likely to have the good instruction that you gave your kids, or even a good father or mother, to be able to help them.
Right.
That's just a problem kind of across the board now in any color, it seems like. We're having less and less two-parent families, and that, they found contributes to poverty. Poverty contributes to the inequality. It's just this tough cycle. So what are some ways we can address that?
One thing, I'm going to give the state of Utah credit in their education system. They take a lot of beating, saying that we don't have enough funds for each student and so forth. But our education system here does a great job of allocating resources. The issue comes in the there's the issue of access, and a lot of the schools that are mostly majority minority don't really have the resources, as you stated, coming from the household to be able to support the school. Both parents are working generally. In a lot of the more affluent schools, you have one parent working, so that either mom or dad can go to the school and can donate time to help alleviate some of the stresses and pressures on the teachers, so they can actually work on the content of which they're trying to convey to the kids as they're educating them. In a lot of the marginalized communities, you don't have that. So you've got a gap there. When we look at technology, the kids in some of these more affluent schools have computers at home. They have cell phones. In a lot of these other communities, these kids don't have those same resources. We're going through this COVID event right now when the schools shut down, and a lot of the students did not have the technology to keep them up. As we're sitting here wondering how we're going to educate our students, there are some that just can't get what they need. The libraries were closed, so they couldn't go work on the library computers. They don't have friends that have computers where they could go study. So it's been a very difficult time right now for education. But I know that there are resources there that if people knew about it, knew about the need, they would be willing to help. And it's really critical that as a community, we come together and we find these niches where we have these needs. How many computers have each of us gone through? And when we go through that computer, we take it in, we trade it in, and they give us $100, $200, and they either scrap it or refurbish it. There has to be programs where those computers get utilized, even though they're not, the greatest, latest technology. They need to get utilized. We've got to get corporations like our internet providers to be willing to provide families that really can't afford it the opportunity to have internet service. And we're working on some of these things in the community right now. There are companies like Comcast that are putting together programs that'll do this. And those things are really critical. Well, we need to let everybody know that that's available so that we can contribute our part and be able to help these students have an opportunity to be successful. Because guess what? In 5, 6, 8, 10 years, those students are going to be on our streets looking for work. And we want them to be able to contribute to our society. And without having that desire to have them grow, to be contributors, to be a part of our society, we end up with some of the systemic issues that end up occurring that impact us negatively. And we really want to avoid that best we can.
Jeanetta, do you have anything?
Yes, Shawn is absolutely correct, because I am a member of the Salt Lake Education Foundation. And when the COVID first hit, and the teachers were saying that some of the children were not being able, their parents were not able to come pick up their homework, their schoolwork. And so they were getting behind. Then we found that some of the parents, they didn't even have internet access. So they couldn't even get on a computer. They didn't have a computer. They didn't have internet. And so what we ended up doing was having a school bus it was kind of like a hot spot, when you go to McDonald's or places like that. it was like a hot spot in the community where we were able to get some of the families some computers and internet access where they were being able to get on and do their homework. And so we found that even food, some of the families, you know, they're essential workers. They didn't have food. They, you know, we had to try to get hand sanitizers for them. We had to get the food. We had to get start getting school supplies and things like that. So those are a lot of families that are really, really hurting during this COVID-19 crisis and this pandemic. And we want to make sure that we can reach out to those families and try to assure them that there are ways that we can try to help, you know, in the communities. We've always helped with the Boys and Girls Clubs. So we had a good working relationship with them. But then some of those clubs like that, they've been closed. And so these kids are being home and without food because the mothers and fathers are trying to work, and then they had 3 and 4 jobs. Then some of those jobs they couldn't go to. And so they were having to go to, you know, food banks and so they could get food. So it's been a very kind of a trying time for the folks. And we have also reached out to folks because during crises like this, you see so many suicides or people that are even talking about it. And there's an app that which people can download free, and it's called Safe UT. And it has a 24-hour crisis. And the people at the University of Utah, they're the ones that staff those telephones. So people can call and they can just talk to a person, you know, one-on-one to say, you know, that person may be saying, well, I'm just having a hard time. I just need to have somebody to talk to. That 24-hour service will give them that opportunity to talk to somebody in person and try to get help, because so many times we just don't know what people are going through.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So anybody who wants to ask a question, you could maybe put it in chat or you can raise your hand. But give me some, both of you, give me some examples of things you've experienced here where we as white people aren't getting our racism, where we just don't quite understand what we're saying or doing that's causing some suffering and difficulty and inequality for the Black community.
Go ahead, Jeanetta.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think one of the things is employment, because I also serve on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and we're doing a study now that's going to be released in several months. Right now, it's just kind of in the revising stage. And in that, we found that African-American men make far less money than African-American women. And then the African-American men and women make far less than the white man and woman with the same amount of education. And so we need to make sure that we are closing that gap between finances between all races, and making sure that we can, you know, make it come. If you're doing the same job, then and you have the same experience, the same education, there's no way that you should be making less money than your next door neighbor.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to touch on, Jay, you mentioned earlier about, well, 2 things. You mentioned what can we do and what might we be doing that we don't realize that we're doing. To the latter, one of the things that happens in society are the expression of microaggressions and the lack of understanding of biases that we hold within ourselves. And a lot of times what happens is when you meet people, even though you don't know it, you don't want to frame your ideologies that way, biases step in and they create these barriers, even though they're small barriers or they could be big barriers, but they're based on the environment that we were raised in, the understanding that we have, and the way that our brain instantly groups people and acculturates, certain characteristics to those groups of people. And one of the things that I run into quite a bit is people walking up to me and, first they're sometimes afraid to say anything to me, but next they're asking me questions right away like, so what is it like to be Black? I could spend a whole lifetime telling you that, but the important thing is developing a relationship before you try to ask me an intimate question, something that's that serious, something that is really deep and belongs to me. One of the things that we run into now is people saying phrases like, I don't see color. Don't devalue me by not seeing my color. Mm-hmm. See who I am. See that I am a Black man, and because I see that you're a white person, and I have value because of that. And we don't want to devalue any individuals by asking certain questions like that. So I'll tell kind of a funny story. It talks about it kind of explains the difference between, blatant ignorance or racism and the naivety that children have. I was at a baseball game watching a baseball game with my godson, and I was sitting behind a woman and her 3 or 4 year old son, and he kept staring at me off and on. And, then he'd turn around and he just whip around, and a couple of times he'd stare at me for like 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, literally would not stop staring at me. And finally, I'm just like, hey, how you doing, young man? He looked at me and he said, are you a chocolate man? And I said, why, yes, I am. Just because I could see that he was coming from a place of innocence. And I could also tell that how uncomfortable his mother was, because she didn't turn around. She didn't say a word. So I realized that he wasn't coming from a place of negativity, from a place of hatred. He came from a place of curiosity. And that place of curiosity is where we want everybody to come from when you discuss something with us. Come to a conversation with me being authentic, wanting to really know, not wanting to find a solution to anything that's happening right now, first of all, but being willing to learn about me, being willing to share, experiences that we both may have shared sometime in our life. Once we develop that relationship, then you can get into some of these really hard questions. And because a lot of times these really hard questions might seem pointed, and you don't want any one of the two parties who's in this dialogue to feel like they're in a defensive mode, that they have to protect themselves. We have to create these safe spaces through the dialogue and language that we use to communicate. And that takes building a relationship over time. I've done that with a few people on this call, and Jay, yourself, being able to speak openly about these types of things. And when you get to that point, that's when we start to see change. What we need from our white brothers and sisters is resilience. When you hear something, say something. Mm-hmm. When you're in a situation where somebody's saying something that just is derogatory, be willing to step up and not be fearful to step up and say, that's not right. That's wrong. You don't have to know the reasons why it's right or wrong, but you know it's wrong. Say something. If you can maintain that type of resilience, we start to see change, because that person's going to walk away and start thinking about that conversation for not 5 minutes, but they're going to think about it for a long time, especially if you have some influence over that person via your relationship.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Jeanetta, anything?
Yeah, that's so true what Shawn said too, because I tell folks all the time, when somebody walks up to you and all of a sudden they feeling uncomfortable, but then they want to tell you, they feel comfortable enough though, that they want to tell you a joke. And then they'll say, let me tell you about this joke. Let me tell you this joke. I think you'll think it's real funny. And I just adamantly say, I don't want to hear your joke. I don't listen to jokes. Don't tell it to me. I don't go out and telling jokes, like that. And it's really not to make that person uncomfortable, but it's to say to that person, don't come at me asking me, do I want to hear a joke that I think is funny? Well, I probably won't think it's funny, because then what happens is that once they start to tell you a joke about, another race of person, then that inserts it to about another person or and you know, it just goes on and on. And I just tell people, don't tell the jokes, don't listen to them. And then if you see somebody, like Shawn said, you see somebody that's saying something and you know that they shouldn't be, you know it's not right, then you should speak up and say something and just say, you know, I'm offended by what you said. I'm offended by what I just heard you say, or something like that. And just say, you know, now you wouldn't say that. How would you feel if somebody said that to, you know, your mother, your father, your sister, brother, or something like that? So I think people need to go ahead and take a stand. And then when people say, well, I'm colorblind. No, you're not colorblind. Don't say that. You know, like Shawn said, see me for who I am and know that I bring worth to the table just like that other person bring worth to the table. So we're saying, if you see something, say something. Sometimes you may not think it's the right thing to say, but then in the long run, you're going to feel better that you did say something, that you spoke out, and because you know it wasn't right. And that's just like, I saw a person that had posted a group, probably like Black kids, and their head kind of had baggy pants the other day, and it was a white person that had posted it. Well, I know that person well enough, and I said, why would you post that? Why would you post that picture like that? I said, you're judging, and you want everybody else to judge these kids because they have baggy pants. And then he took it down, the post down. But I'm not afraid to say something to whoever it might be. And, you know, maybe they'll take offense and maybe they don't. But I took offense because he posted that picture. And I thought that it was negative and was derogatory.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. A couple of questions. Erica Munson, you're welcome to ask this yourself, or I can read it. What would you prefer? Where'd you go? Must be on the other screen. I'll go ahead and read it.
We can read it.
Okay, you can read it? Yeah.
You don't want me to read it out loud, though. I think everybody can read it in their comments.
That's true.
I unmuted myself, so I can read it now. If that works.
Great. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so has the murder of George Floyd and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement changed the conversation around racism and equity in Utah? And if it has, how would you characterize it? I'm also interested if you feel like it hasn't, and maybe it's a conversation that's been going on for a long time that a lot of us are only hearing now.
I'll do the not so nice side, and Jeanetta's a lot nicer than me about this. I'll let her take it.
That's good.
No, it's great that there's an illumination on the murder of George Floyd because of technology, and the fact that a lot of people have seen it. We also have a captive audience because of COVID, so people can see this. The visibility is really high, but we're looking at 400 plus years of the same type of treatment of Black people in America. You know, from the 60s with Bobby Hutton being killed, he was murdered. He was part of the Black Panther movement, but he was unarmed when he walked out with a white flag in his hand, was killed. We looked all the way back to 1991 when Rodney King incident took place. You know, the arrest for no real reason of Bobby Seale, where they were gonna basically bury him in jail. You know, the murder of Fred Hampton, who was a racial uniter, who tried to unite people. And these things were coming from a system that was starting to be created to create these outlets for legal systems and law enforcement to be able to mistreat Black people. J. Edgar Hoover was one of the greatest leaders of anti-Black movements, but he had the FBI to hide behind. And we don't ever want to talk about these things in our history. Our history that we learn in schools has done a great disservice to our citizenry. Most of you should have known these things have occurred if our history books were true. But in the Black community, we call it his story, not our story. And we get caught in this trap of history, creating these narratives that really have very little fact to the real systemic occurrences that are taking place that create the environment we're in now. So when everybody sees the Black Lives Matters movement, they forget that that movement has been going on for some time. This isn't all brand new. The murder of black men, innocent black men, has been going on for a long time. This is not brand new. So we're suffering from basically what we call racial battle fatigue, because we carry this burden with us every single day. It's a burden that shouldn't have to be put upon people. And it's put upon us at a very young age. And as we get older, we become more cynical because we've been through more and more experiences. So we're trying to find ways in people to help us to get past that. We don't want to be in this state. We don't want to be protesting. You know, we should have signs that say all lives matter. That should be the way it was, but it's not the way it is. That's why you see Black Lives Matter. You know, but I'm not a protester. I believe that change comes from getting to the table. And that's where I try to work. That's what Jeanetta does. She gets to the table. If we can't talk to our law enforcement officials, they're not going to change. We have to be there to have discussions with them. And it's hard work. But these things, don't be fooled. These are not new occurrences. These have been going on for 4+ centuries now.
Thank you, Shawn.
Yeah, and Shawn, that's so true, because what we've seen, we had Eric Gardner even before of George Floyd. We had little 12-year-old Tamir Rice in Ohio that somebody called and said that here's a little boy out there playing with a gun. Well, instead of the police trying to go and see exactly what had happened, they came in the car so fast, jumped out the car, shot the little 12-year-old boy. He was playing with the play gun, shot and killed him, 12 years old. Then later we find out that if there had been data, the database had been where the other police department that he was hired on, because I think he had been on that force for a little over a year, that database would have said that the other people that had evaluated him had said he is not fit to be a police officer. Not fit to be a police officer. But that was found out after he kills this little 12-year-old boy. And then we've had all these other cases too, because for instance, the NAACP, we were founded in 1909 because of the lynchings in Springfield, Illinois. Just right now, Congress has been debating the anti-lynching bill that they can't get passed. And I'm saying, why can't you pass it? They've been going back and forth on that, the anti-lynching bill, after all these many years. And we just see all these different things that you know that people are finally seeing now after the 8 minutes and 46 seconds to have that police officer kneeling on the neck, and the man is saying that I can't breathe. And then later we find out that this officer, no, he knew him. He knew George Floyd. They had worked together as security in a nightclub. And then, you know, for him to do that over a $20 bill that was, you know, they said that was probably counterfeit. But to, you know, lose your life on $20. And then there's the other boy that killed, the white boy that was part of the KKK, the Aryan Nations, white supremacist group. He goes in and talks to the group of people at the Emmanuel Church and befriend them, says prayer with them, and then shoots and kills them. Well, when the police go and arrest him, he said he was hungry. I mean, they had him handcuffed. He said he was hungry. Guess what they did? They took him to Burger King and got him something to eat. Now, if that had been an African-American boy, a young man, I don't think they would have gotten that person something to eat. So, you know, we look at all the different things that's going on, and we're saying that, you know, if you're going to treat one person this way, then treat both of them that way. You know, don't treat, it's just like your own children. You know, you may have you know, and a boy and a girl, or two girls, two boys, whatever it might be. But you don't want one to think, well, my mom or dad favors that one more so than the other one. You know, you want to treat them all the same. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to say is that, you know, we work with law enforcement, and we've been to the table with law enforcement way before this happened. You know, we, in January every year, we give at our NAACP Dr. King Luncheon a First Responders Awards. And we have a lot of police officers that show up and they're in uniform and they get recognized, and they appreciate that. So after this happened with George Floyd, of course, a lot of those officers, you know, called me and said, what can we do? You know, we need to do something. We want to help. We want to continue to help. And we did have a meeting week before last with law enforcement. And then we have another one that I'm working on now as well, that we're trying to bring community, law enforcement, people together to talk about some of these issues. And one thing that we're going to talk about is some legislation. So we've been doing that as well. So, you know, to get some concrete legislation that our national has said that these are some of the issues that we want, you know, to talk about, and some being limit the use of force. Of course, the civilian review boards, and we want to look at some of those things too. But those are just some of the things. But we have seen a lot of change, and a lot of folks, you know, calling the NAACP office, taking out memberships as well. You know, we are a nonprofit, you know, civil rights organization. We're nonpartisan, and anybody that believes in our cause, which is equality, can be a member of the NAACP. I just had one person call, and she was a white woman, and she said, I'm white, but I wanted to know, can I take a membership out? And we said, of course you can. And so, and that's one of the things that people just don't know. And so when we have the opportunity, you know, we tell folks that, yes, you can be a member of the NAACP. We gladly take memberships. You know, we don't discriminate and say that you can't have a membership.
That's good. Shawn, CV, does that answer your question about the police, and or do you want to have some? Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Sorry. I think you kind of addressed my question. You can just, if you have nothing else to add, go for it. I just read your bio, Jeanetta, about that you've been in the West Valley Police Professional Review Board. Yes. And my question was, how should the community interact with the police force? And you might have answered it already, but if you have anything else to add to that.
Well, I think that the community can interact with the police department, but not by calling for defunding of the police. We have not called for defunding of the police department. What we're saying is that if city councils and the mayors or whoever it might be want to redirect some funds toward another group, they should try to bring in more social workers to work with police. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the most dangerous calls that the police go out on are domestic calls. And because what happened even in Ogden, what was it, last month, when the police officer had been on force for 15 months and then he's killed, you know, another domestic violence incident. Well, if we were having more social workers to be able to go out and intercede in these type of things, and not the people thinking, well, the police is going to come out here, I'm going to be waiting for them, I'll have my gun. Well, if it was a social worker, I don't think we'd have that same outcome.
Thanks. Shawn, Newell, do you have anything to add to Shawn's question?
No, Jeanetta and I both work really closely with the law enforcement. The ways that citizens can do it is just to go to your police department, ask for some time. That's what I did when I wanted to talk to the chiefs of Salt Lake City and Cottonwood Heights. I called them up and said, hey, look, can I have a minute of your time? And they said, yeah, sure. And ever since, I've had a relationship with them. But if you don't talk to them, you don't really know. You know, a lot of the incidents and things that we see on the news and so forth, there's a big story that goes on behind them that we are not aware of as citizenry. And you want to get the facts before you really go off. And, you know, a lot of times we ask a lot of questions they don't really want to answer at the time, but they'll at least, you know, let us know that they're going to give us the answers as they can give them to us. A lot of times it's not what I want to hear, but I have to be able to be willing to be patient and to be willing to let them do their job and trust in them doing their job without me being too disruptive. So make the call to them, go talk to them. You know, I had a neighbor tell me he tried to talk to one of our officers here locally, and the officer looked at him like he was crazy. And this is a white guy that walked up to the officer, you know, because they park in the school parking lots, and the officer got really defensive just because it was somebody in his own citizenry that came up to talk to him. And we have to get past that adversarial attitude. And that's what I talk to the chiefs about. Take the chip off these guys' shoulders. Spend more money training them. That's why I'm with Jeanetta. We cannot defund them. We need to spend more money training our officers. They are not in the post academy here in Utah for very long. And then they're put out on the streets with a gun and a taser and mace and whatever else. They need some training that teaches them how to deal with people. You don't want people that are unstable trying to deal with people. And we have to knock that out. And the chiefs will always come to us and say, there are bad apples. We're trying to weed those bad apples out. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are really good at hiding who they really are. And it takes them some time to weed those folks out. The issue is for our community is when they open up their gates of craziness, it impacts us negatively. So we have to find what mechanisms through education, through greater vetting, to find out who those people are before they hit the streets.
Thank you.
Let me just interject something else too, because the NAACP, when we met with POST, the Peace Officer Standard and Training, they offered a seat at the table with their group. And then we also recommended to the Fraternal Order of Police, who we signed an agreement to work together with on June 2nd. And they had agreed to this, to have their officers obtain degrees in clinical therapists and social psychology, and to work with mental health workers in these type of situations. And so they've been really, really good to work with us. And like I said, the Fraternal Order of Police, we did it here for Utah. And then the folks up in Idaho called, and they want to do the very same thing, is have an agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police and the NAACP. And I think working together with groups like this, and working with law enforcement, where people seeing us working together, and we're not out bashing, the police and calling for defunding. And I think it makes a huge difference.
I think so too. Thank you. Alan, so just a sec. Ross, we'll do Alan and then you, Ross. Janice's got a great question that we'll ask in a minute too. So Alan, go ahead. And then
I'm struggling to try to figure out a couple of things. One is how we recognize the biases. I know one example that occurred to me the other day was when we say we want to move to a neighborhood where we have great schools for our kids. The natural question ought to be, well, why doesn't every kid have a great school? Why do you have to live in the right neighborhood to get a good school? Mm-hmm. And then as we moved out of Jay's neighborhood recently, we had a bunch of neighbors that asked us, make sure you get the right people to move in. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And so I get that. The question I have is, those of us who are, in the name of, in the way Lee calls a white ally, what are we going to do in Salt Lake when we really have a one-party system? If you're in Salt Lake, it's a Democratic system. If you're outside of Salt Lake, it's a Republican system. They don't run primaries. They don't run good people in primaries. How do we help you make change that actually is meaningful?
Let me clarify.
And let my wife clarify something she says.
I think in the case of the neighbors, they were referring to religion and not racial ethnicity, but I'm not totally sure about that.
I'm not sure of that.
That was my take on it. So
Well, either way, even if it's just a religion, you know, that's bias.
It's
And
true.
that,
It's illegal too.
yeah, and that creates issues, and that's not right. I know good people from every faith. So, you know, to stereotype and to have those concerns is concerning. You ask what can you do as allies? You can know the issues, know who stands behind the issues, and vote. You can go and speak to your legislators that may not be on the right track, so to speak, and talk to them and say, look, as a constituent, you need to be concerned about these things. And you can gather others to be able to do the same thing. You can wear a politician out so fast by ringing his phone nonstop that you wouldn't believe it, where they want to quit. But they're going to have to listen to you, because once they're in those positions, guess what their number one goal is?
Stay in the position.
To stay put.
Mhm.
If you create a thorn to where they think they might not be able to stay put by your actions, then you're going to start to see change. And you can get their voice. They have to talk to you. You can talk to them during the session. It's a very easy process. You go, get a card, fill it out, they hand it to your legislator, they come out to talk to you. It's an easy process. It's an easy thing to do, but we don't have enough people doing it. We just let things go by. We just think, oh, the other guys are going to mention it. Somebody else is going to talk to them about it. And it just never changes anything in their mindsets. We have to do it through our vote and our activities up at the Capitol Hill.
And I
Exactly.
learned tonight that we're going to join the NAACP. Do you have
All
like
right.
do you have like a newsletter that alerts us to things that are active that concern this?
We have a web page. We haven't done a newsletter for a while, but we have our web page, and you can join online on our website at NAACP-SaltLakeBranch.org, and then double click on memberships, and it'll go directly take you to the PayPal, and it'll just tell you how, what to fill out. But we'd be more than happy to have you take a membership out. And you also get a crisis magazine that comes out quarterly, and that crisis magazine was published originally, like in 1909. Our editor was W.E.B. Du Bois. And then we still have run that out of our headquarters in Baltimore. So a little bit about the NAACP too, because I know we didn't get into that. The NAACP, like I said, we're a national organization. We have our president and CEO, Derek Johnson. We have our chairman of the board, Leon Russell. And then we have 64 national board members. And I served for 6 years as a member of that national board. And then I also served as a member of the 17 executive committee members, where the president and CEO, who at that time was Kwesi Mfume, who is now back in Congress, he was reporting to me as part of that 17-member executive committee. And then on the local level, we have our local branches, and then we have some of the college chapters. Because we have college chapters, and then we have youth councils. And that's the way, everybody have their own little names and stuff. So we're the Salt Lake branch, NAACP. And then, of course, we have our Tri-State Conference, which is Idaho, Nevada, and Utah. And we have 7 regions, and we're in Region 1. And so we have our different, it's structured. We're very structured on how we set up. And the people that serve on the national board, they make up folks from each one of those regions.
And can I add to that to Jeanetta? I talked about earlier about resilience and being able to step up. The NAACP was also founded by a number of white people as well. And since its inception, people have started to think it's simply only a Black organization. It's a civil rights organization. And we do need advocates to join who can come and contribute. If you come to our NAACP meetings, it is a very diverse group. And it blows the mind even of national. Jeanetta, you didn't even go into that one. National can't believe how diverse our executive committee is. And that is the way that we want our entire society to look. That's the way we want our entire state to be, is everybody at the table and everybody contributing.
Amen to that.
Nice. Ross,
Exactly.
can you unmute or do you need to do it? Can you unmute?
Did I?
There you go.
Yeah, the icon seems to be missing from the bottom of my screen. Okay. Does this moment feel any different to you? I was looking at a little history, and it occurred to me, and you correct me if you think this perception is inaccurate, but the 1960s, the Black Pride, Black is Beautiful, Black Power, it seemed to me that that effort was largely addressing Black communities, whereas Black Lives Matter, which is a poignantly small ask, it's almost heartbreakingly small ask, seems to me to be addressing the white communities. So that's a little, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on that, but that's part of why I'm thinking that this moment might be different.
Well, I don't know if I would say that it was different. I think it's building up on what we've done years and years back when we've had all of the protests and the John Lewis's being, in those civil rights marches and marching for equal rights, marching for fair housing, and marching just to be able to go into a public restaurant and eat, or public place to even stay at a hotel. And so this is building up on all of those other things that we've had. And I think it's building up on the momentum that all of a sudden people are realizing these are Black people that keep getting killed, that we keep seeing on TV, that their videos are out there. Because it was the NAACP probably 12 years or so ago called for body cameras for all police officers here in Utah. And then a legislator had that bill, presented that bill and passed. And then after that, the governor put some funds aside to have body cameras for everybody. But I think this might feel a little different because you get so many of young people are saying, I want to get out there and march. I want to get out there and protest. And we're saying, you have the right to protest, but don't do it in a violent way. Do it in a respectful way. Don't have confrontations with the police. The police are out there trying to do their job as well, and they're trying to keep the folks safe. I think it's just a momentum that's building up because you saw what happened. Everybody saw what happened with George Floyd, and then before George Floyd was the Ahmaud Arbery that was jogging, and then the people thought, oh, they'll chase him down because make an excuse that maybe he was stealing something, and he wasn't, just out there jogging. And then there's all those other incidents too. And so finally, what happened with George Floyd is people finally thought, even if because of the COVID virus, that they're saying, oh, I need to get out and get some air. Well, I think it was just saying, looking at that video and saying, this is enough. We need to do something about it. And I think that's why you saw so many people coming out protest, and then so many other people going out trying to destroy the Confederate statues that we're seeing. And then Mississippi all of a sudden coming saying, oh, we need to get rid of the flag that had the Confederate emblem in it.
I'd like to add, when you belong to a group of people that have done so much for this country, that were used as an economic tool for this country, and you remain under a subjugated system, a system that subjugates you continuously, you lash out. And the Black Lives Matter sign says, we are here and we do matter. Don't disregard us. Don't exclude us. all we want to do is have an equal participation in society. Nobody's asking for anything more or anything less, just equal participation, because we matter just like anybody else.
Mhm.
And again, we need to really make sure that we're sharing the real history of our country with our young people, so they don't grow up thinking that they're better than another, just based on the privilege that they have, or that they can subjugate somebody just because they're at a different station in life or different color. We need to understand that we do matter as people. We've made contributions. We continue to make contributions, and we have to be acknowledged.
Thank you. So Ross, I think I know why you're asking that. It does seem like that we are hearing more about what white people don't get. You mentioned white privilege, white fragility, things that, we've had some great books out lately, and thoughts expressed in ways that I don't remember having been expressed before in the past, in terms of the Black movement and equality. So it does seem like under the microscope, the white population is being asked to really look hard at themselves and the things that they haven't realized and still don't realize often, that give them a leg up and advantages that people of Black and often any color are having disadvantages because of things that we do and the ways we approach things and the way we think that we've often been oblivious to, or not wanting to even face, because it would require us to ask some hard questions and maybe cost us some things. Does that sound, Ross, is that kind of a little bit where you were going?
Well, I'm not sure, and I don't want to take up too much time. It feels different to me.
Yeah, Ross,
It feels different from my end. Not that I lived through the 60s. And Jeanetta, I have a hard time believing you were school age in 1954. Really not. I'm really not buying that.
Well, thank you.
It seems that there may be more reflection going on in white circles than perhaps there had been in the past.
Well,
but the main thing was the address, because it really struck me as in the 1960s, it was building up Black pride, and Black is beautiful and Black power. But now the slogan that seems to be addressing everybody else, the white community in America. And to me, that seems like a significant change. And it seems like a number of people in white communities are responding to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ross, I think that you're onto something, and I'm glad you caught that, because it is putting that bright light, that interrogation light on yourself to say, I'm part of that system that has created this environment where there is no equality. And we, as people, for hundreds of years have tried to fight for that equality through peaceful protest, through doing the things that we were asked to do, by educating ourselves, by assimilating in some instances, to do the things that we were told to do, yet the rights and the privileges of being an American still have been very, very limited as far as accessible to the Black community. So this opportunity to have some introspect will hopefully help everybody understand that you do have a part to play in this. You do have something that you can do, and it's the power to, rewrite this ship, to steer it in the right direction. And like I said before, it's not saying I want to give these people something that, nobody else has. And it's not giving me a piece of your pie. It's just giving me the opportunity to bake that pie the same way you do and then eat the pie and enjoy it just like you would in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Well, we've got a little over 15 minutes. Jenna asked a really nice question, Jenna Spangler. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, and just maybe put a tiny bit of context to it. So I was struck by, Shawn, what you were saying earlier about curiosity. I think curiosity is such an important thing. And just something that I've noticed in the past little bit is that every white person has an opinion, and we're all shouting at each other about what those opinions are. And I'm just curious about how to best express that curiosity. Because one thing I'm also aware of is I don't want to, at a time like this, overwhelm every Black friend I have with just like, let's put more burden on you to hold the shoulder, all of this. And yet it's also, I know, an opportunity, right, to have more Black voices heard. So I'm just trying to hold that and try to figure out what is the best way for us to really dig into the questions we have. Where is it best to address those? What kinds of questions do you wish we'd be asking? And if you have any opinions about what you see white people doing to each other right now, I'd be curious about that. So.
Well, it's pretty easy to talk to somebody. Here, and you touched on something that gets under my skin a little bit. And I hope it's not you when I say this. So, people say, well, I have this Black friend. They may know one Black person on earth. And that's their Black friend.
Mm-hmm.
So your Black friend is the one you break bread with, the one you can be honest with, the one that you can talk about these issues with without having any concern for them to shift any narratives that you may be presenting, or that your thoughts will be accepted and you still have that love for one another when you're having conversation. If you don't have that and and your curiosity is bubbling, be willing to set the environment. Ask somebody, hey, can we go have a cup of coffee? Can I talk to you on the phone for just 10, 15 minutes? And tell them right at that point, say, look, I want you to know that this is a safe space, and I'm coming to you with an open heart. I just need to know. I want to know, and don't be afraid of hurting me. Don't be afraid of making me feel bad. And if you can get to that point where you can have dialogue in that safe space and show care and compassion for one another, people will share. It's hard because we have to carry this burden all the time, and we have those conversations, and it's emotional a lot of times for us because we have to always seem to give everything we've got and not get back very much. So if you're willing to do that, people are going to recognize that, and they're going to be willing to share with you. They're going to be willing to converse with you and help you to understand. And we also want to know more about you. We also want to know what drives you. It's not a one-way street. And that's where we have to get to, where we understand that. We're all in this together, and we're not going anywhere. And we need to have that understanding. When you move to that neighborhood, there was a couple that just moved, you're there. So no matter what they say to you, no matter how many times, they walk their dog and he does his business on your lawn, but they pick it up, he's still going to be there, but still go out and converse with them, develop the relationship. And it's amazing how fast things change. I'm the only Black person in my neighborhood for blocks. So when I first moved here, I did one simple thing. I waved at every single neighbor. And I did that for so many years that when my wife would walk around the block, people would say, well, where do you live? And she could describe it, and they would not even know, because they didn't think that she lived in the house that I lived in. And she would have to say, well, and she gets so sick of this, I'm Shawn's wife. Oh yeah, we know Shawn, and it just happened through time, waving. And then every once in a while you pull over, have a quick conversation with somebody, move on. But I knew that if I approached them slowly and in a way that was conducive to relieving some of their fears, that I could develop those relationships. And now my neighbors talk to me about everything. And it just takes a little bit of time, but it takes trust. It takes that willingness, and it takes just that little bit of time and that little bit of effort to just step up and say, look, I'm coming to you as me, and I'm curious and I want to know. So don't be afraid. That's a lot of times people are afraid, but guess what? Jeanetta and I aren't afraid to talk to y'all. We're talking to you tonight. We have no fear in telling you what's going on. And we're very open. We're open books because we know the impact of us being open with you hopefully will carry over into other conversations that you have.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's so true, because after all of this started to happen with, the killing of Mr. Floyd, George Floyd, I had so many parents calling, and they wanted to know if I could suggest, a book or some books that they could share with their children or some videos. And so I went to the Salt Lake County Library, and I had some help in compiling a whole list of videos and books for children. That's on one bookmark that we had front and back. And then another one, just a whole page for adults if they wanted to look at these videos. They had some fiction and nonfiction, and I said, no, I don't want, fiction. I want to have something that they can, they know that this isn't just, some fairy tale about racism and how do we confront racism? What is it that we can do? Those type of things. And so I've been sharing that, and we had some bookmarks. And so we, hopefully we'll start trying to get that out. And another thing that we do that supports everybody is the census. Shawn has been a strong supporter of making sure we get folks fill out their forms. And so we have a bookmark now too. And on one side, it talks about the census, the filling out, it takes less than 10 minutes. And then on the other side, it talks about voter registration. And we want people to not only register, but to go and vote. And one good thing about here in Utah, I tell folks, is that we have it easy because you don't even have to, your mail-in ballot, you don't even have to put a stamp on it. You have to make sure you sign it, and that's it, and put it back in the mail. And so we do have it easy. I think a lot of things that we can work together on issues like that, the census, the voter registration, talk to people about, the videos and things that they can do, the different things with health and health issues. For instance, I had one young lady that was telling me about, one of the patients that she had in the hospital, and the patient was an older white man, and he said, "Did you paint your skin that color?" And she was taken back and said, "No, I didn't. I was born this color." And he said, "Oh, too bad." This was an older white man. Well, she was feeling bad about how and what happened. Then the next night, this same patient, I can't think of what they call it, red line, I think it's what it's called. And she had to give him chest compressions to keep him alive. And I said, "How did that make you feel?" And she said, "I was trying to save his life." And I said, "One thing about it, you were trying to save his life, but I bet you it didn't matter to him at that time what color of your skin was." And she said, "You're absolutely right." So those are some of the things that we have to, face on a daily basis of just discrimination. And people think that they're being funny by asking somebody, questions like that. And unlike the little boy that, Shawn talked about, he was just curious, because he was like, just asking him. But of course it was embarrassing to the mother, that the little boy would ask that, but he just wanted to know, and he just asked. And so we try to be honest to the little people too, because they have questions, and you have to be honest with them and just sit down and explain to them. It's just like when they're real little and you give them candy or something, you say, "What do you say?" They automatically say, "Thank you." So they know at an early age things to say and not say. So I think it's all a learning lesson for for a lot of folks, as
So-
today's call has been.
Thank you. Something I've heard you both kind of touch on, particularly Shawn, is developing relationships. So to kind of segue from what Jana asked, where could we find opportunities to develop relationships with more people in the Black community? Does the NAACP have gatherings or I mean, what would you suggest? How can we make some more Black friends?
Well,
Develop those relationships.
relationships have to be authentic. So they have to develop over time, and you have to be willing. I mean, you don't want to make friends with every single Black person. I don't want to make friends with every single white person. But you have to have an authentic relationship. It may be somebody that you see frequently when you go to a grocery store. Start off by just waving and saying hi, and you'll be amazed at how often those things turn into conversations, and you start to learn more about each other, and you start to develop some semblance of a relationship. I don't walk up to any white man and say, "Hey, dude, I want to be your friend." I would scare a mess out of them, and I don't want to do that to them. But if we're in a situation that's conducive to us having a conversation, our initial conversation isn't gonna develop into a friendship. You have to know somebody over time, because there's a difference between an acquaintance and a friend. An acquaintance is somebody you can say hey to, hi, how things going, and small talk. A friend is the one that's going to spend $5,000 to bail you out of jail at 2:00 in the morning. So that takes a lot of work to get to that point, and you have to be willing on both sides to share intimacies that help you get to that point. So developing acquaintances is fairly easy, and your acquaintances can develop into friends. There's no doubt about that. But you don't want to be out there just trying to make friends, but you want to be involved. So when you ask about opportunities, we have NAACP events. There are events that go on with the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce. There are opportunities to go visit the churches that we attend, to get a chance to be around people and meet people. It's putting yourself out there. We have to put ourselves out there every single day. And, when we walk into the workplace, generally, there's not a whole lot of people that look like me when I go to work. There's maybe one or two if I'm lucky. If I go to a conference, I don't look like everybody else at the conference. It's just me. But I know that I have to, be able to assimilate at that time to that situation and that environment. So I do it through conversation. And it's not just, I'm not trying to get deep right away, but there are times when I meet somebody, and you know how it is. You meet somebody, you go, "Oh, I gotta know more about this person. This person's all right. They're cool." Then you can start to develop that, and you can reach out, and it's not an intimidating thing. But people know when you're coming at them authentically or when you're not. So be very careful to be authentic in any conversations you try to develop or any relationship you try to develop.
That's great advice. I think that's so true. Maybe you could put in the chat, or just send me, and I can put it on the website, some of the churches you might recommend, where we could have a chance to start associating on a regular basis with, more people in the Black community. It's, I think, probably particularly difficult right now with COVID, because there's just not much interaction in general. So some of it could be even online or virtual conversations. But, I know in my goings about and stuff, particularly because I work out of my home, I just don't run into, many in the Black community at all. And so I would like to expand that, and I think there's others that would like to too. So if you have any suggestions of where and how, we can develop long-term relationships in a natural way, obviously.
You can go with me or Jeanetta. We'll take you.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
Yes.
I'd be happy.
Sure. The church that we attend is a multicultural church called The Point. And they have The Point, POINT, and they have, in fact, Pastor Corey Hodges is pastor, and right now they're having virtual services, and you can join that at 11:15 on Sunday mornings. And I'll send you that link for the Facebook on that one. And then they also have kind of a Bible study on Wednesday evenings, and they do that as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I sent over a couple. So yeah, I attend about three different churches I go to regularly. And one is primarily white, and they're trying to figure out how to get more people of color to go to it, which is K2.
I've heard of that.
Calvary Baptist, and then also The Point.
Great.
Exactly.
Of the books also that you compiled?
Oh,
I'm
we
sorry.
have a whole list of books.
Can I get the list of your books that you compiled?
Yes, I have it on a I can send it through an email.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll put it on the website.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll send it over. It's a
Great.
kind of it says adult nonfiction on racism. I don't know if they see this list. They might not be able to see it, but this is one page that'll look like that, and then I'll send the other page, which is bookmarks, like on printed on back to back.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're more than welcome to have as much that we can share. There's another issue too that I'd like to bring up too. I just thought about that when you asked for that copy on anti-bullying in the schools, because we have so much interactions with schools, and especially even before now, and there was a lot of bullying going on in schools, and so I had written this the resolution, through our branch, and by kind of urging on with Julian Bond, who is deceased as of August 2015. He was a good friend of mine, great civil rights leader, and he had urged me to write the resolutions, and we did get it passed at our convention, and so we're happy to share that as well. So if you have family members, children, or teachers, we shared it with all of the superintendents in Utah. I think Shawn was I think it was April of 2018, and we shared that. But it's been out for a while, so we'd be more than happy to share information with you.
Great. And one of the best things we can do, sounds like, is join the NAACP.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of your group and get tied in. Alan Jones has already done it as we spoke.
Oh, okay.
Alan and Pam are on board now, so that's good.
Okay. Well, that's great. We appreciate that very much.
Well,
one of the things we can do is get connected. If you want to learn some of the things that are going on socially, Jeanetta and I, we don't get into the fluffy, the mess stuff on Facebook, but we share a lot of historical stuff and a lot of current events. And that's a good way, if you're connected to be able to see some of the things you don't learn in history that we share back and forth, and some of the incidents. Sometimes you do get people making rude comments, but like she did before, she can check them fast. So don't worry about that. But it's a great way to get some insight on some things that aren't really out there in the public, and that people think about, that what will teach us about how our society works and what we can learn and what has been, a part of Black history that is untold, our untold stories. We love to share our untold stories on Facebook. So, look us up there, and we'd be glad to have you in there and share with you. I am, at least, where I could share.
Sure.
Now, is that the official site for your group, or are you talking about individual?
No. It's just as an individual.
Individuals.
Great.
Yeah.
That would be
Because
great.
I love sharing and helping.
Yeah, I can tell you do. So we're about out of time, so I'm just going to let you two, anything else you would like to close with or share before we leave the meeting? Anything else that?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining, and for the questions, and for the communications. And we are hoping that this won't be the last, and that we'll have open communication. And if there's anything that folks may not have maybe got their questions answered to tonight, they can feel free to email us, and we'll be more than happy to share information and have some open discussions to continue as well.
Great. I want to thank everybody as well, because this is heart-wrenching to see, or I should say heart-opening to see so many people willing to have this dialogue and this conversation and to learn and to get a different perspective. If this is how cures take place. This is how change takes place. And if we could get more people to be willing to do events like this and to share and to be a part of just getting to learn more about each other, I think we'd be a long ways down the way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, thank you. You both are wonderful people doing an amazing work, and we appreciate your patience with us and our questions, and
thank you.
Willing to keep trying to move us and the ball along, and we are excited, and I hope all of us will. There's a good group of people that come to these, and so I'm expecting that all of us will try to do some things on our own now to implement the suggestions you've made, and to dig into history a little better and understand what we need to do to keep the change happening. So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, reach out to us anytime.
We'll do that. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jana, for hosting us. Jana Spengler, appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Okay.
Take care.
Good night. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.